Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jenny. Today's video is going to be ranking my ColourPop eyeshadow palettes. I do have 11 of them and I am going to go from my least favorite to my most favorite. The palette I picked is my most favorite of these. I did do a look and I will tell you about that when we get to that palette. Just because I'm ranking these in any particular order does not mean these are bad palettes. I do like all of these for different reasons and I may or may not touch on that once I get to this palette. But I do enjoy all of these. That's why they're still in my collection. I have never gotten rid of a ColourPop palette. I do love them all for different reasons. So we will go ahead and start with my least favorite of 11. Coming in 11th place is the Yes Please palette. I think this may have been the first one they ever came out with in this like pressed powder format, and I do like this palette. It is a really good warm, very warm palette, but I just don't reach for very warm orange red shadows often. That's why I put this in last place. If this is a color scheme that you're really into, these are really good quality eyeshadows, and overall I like the format of this like size. I think this is a really good size of an eyeshadow palette that has a really nice well-rounded bunch of colors in it. So Yes Please did come in last, but I do still really like it. Next is the She palette. It is in collaboration with Karouche, I think. I'm not quite familiar with her, but this is a more monochromatic, cooler, like rosy tone. My only real critique with this is that this is the only row of mattes. The other two rows are all shimmer, which is okay, but I would prefer a few more mattes. But I do really like this. The only other gripe I have is, of course, it's a monochromatic palette, so there are only like a handful of looks you can get out of it, especially since all of these mattes are very muted and similar in tone. But yeah, if you're looking for a monochromatic like rosy tone palette, this is definitely a good one to get. Coming in 9th place is the Misunderstood Disney Villains palette. I do like this, but there are some shades in here that are kind of hard to work with, or they just don't really play well together, but the quality is great. I'm going to say that about all of these. The quality is fantastic. There's just certain reasons I put them in certain orders. So I mean, I don't know, this is kind of like going to be a repetitive video, it seems, now that I'm getting into it. But I do really like this. I do feel that the shimmers do outweigh the mattes. I would, again, prefer more mattes in this palette, but overall I do enjoy it. And the shade Mongrels and Flotsam, these two here, am I pointing to the right ones? These two, they are beautiful, absolutely stunning. And next is the Disney Designer Collection. This is the Princess palette. I like this, but overall it is very neutral. A lot of the shades are really similar in tone, like these two in particular down here. Very similar in tone. I don't like how these mattes have glitter in them. Like these three are all very similar in person. I think this palette could have done with a little bit more variety as far as shades go. Coming in 7th place is the Disney Designer Collection Midnight Masquerade palette. This one does have more mattes and more color variety in it, which I do appreciate. This one does have pressed glitters in it though. Do not like them. They are beautiful in the pan, and this one is stunning on the eyes for like 10 minutes and then it starts to fall and it looks really crappy. I just am not a fan of pressed glitters in general, and ColourPop's newer palettes, all of them for the most part have a pressed glitter, at least one, which I find very disappointing. This does have more tonal like range, like from light to dark. That being said, I do feel like a handful of these down here in the bottom, these deeper mattes, are very similar. Coming in 6th place is the Dream Street palette that's in collaboration with Kathleen Lights. Do really like this one as well. I think it has a nice balance of like cooler, more neutral tones and then some warms. And then of course there are those two pops of blue, which I don't really use a whole lot. I feel like this brighter orangey pink is a really nice addition to all of these neutrals. I feel like it can just kind of brighten up these neutral tones. And I've gotten lots and lots of really pretty looks out of this. We're now starting to hit the I really like all of these about the same. I don't really have a lot of critique for these. I just really enjoy some of these more than the others, but as a whole, these are really good palettes. Number 5 is another collaboration with Kathleen Lights, and it is the Zodiac palette. Here, I'm going to bend this one further back because there is a mirror that might blind you. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I feel like there's a good mix of colors. I was not a fan of these two bluer shades up here. The shimmer's okay, it's a little crumbly, but I can get it to work. But the Aquarius, that like really pretty blue shade, I just can't really get it to work for me ever. The most I can get it to work is for like lower lash line, just kind of blending it in a little bit to the lower lash line, but like blending it in the crease, it's really hard. I've had really good luck using the rest of the shadows in this palette though, and overall I really enjoy it. Next is the You Had Me at Hello palette. This is actually one of my favorite palettes like of all time. I just think it's a really easy palette to work with. It's lots of nice neutral shades with like some nice pops of like a nice pink and then a little bit of a purple. And then like this nice silvery shade is a decent pop as well. It's like a nice neutral palette with like a hint of a color that's not like bam blue or like super intense purple. It's just a nice muted kind of purple, and I thoroughly enjoyed this palette. It is kind of broken up because it was rumored that this was a Kathleen Lights collaboration palette, and then they scrapped it and did something else. So I tried to peel back the sticker to see if I could see anything, but I didn't want to ruin my palette, so I just decided not to do that. But that's why it does look a little bit beat up. Coming in third place is the Sweet Talk palette. I love this palette. Every single look I've gotten from this color selection has been stunning. It's perfect for spring because it has all of those really nice peachy pinks. You may or may not be able to tell because of that like iridescent-y background. It's really reflective. The colors in here are stunning, and this was one of the first palettes that had like a super shock shadow in the pressed format, and I really think that's great. But again, it has those two, am I pointing to them? It has those two pressed glitters that I'm just not a fan of. They don't work for me. I can't get them to work properly. But the color story in here is absolutely stunning for spring and early summer. I really enjoy this palette. Next is the newest one in my collection, and it is the most boring and it is the Going Coconuts palette. I don't know what it is about this palette, but I'm in love with it. I gravitate to it all the time. This is my everyday go-to palette for work. This shade here in the middle, I'm not even kidding, was the only reason I bought this palette. I'm gonna swatch it for you because it's stunning. Like, how perfect is that shade? Of course, do you need this palette? No, not if you have a million other neutral palettes like I do, but that middle shade is worth the like $15 price range to me personally. And I just, every look I get out of it's super easy, super beautiful. Just really, really enjoy this palette. The palette that came in number one is the So Jaded palette in collaboration with Kathleen Lights. Now it is their bigger palette, and that can be a gripe for some people because it is so big, but the bigger the palette, the more variety. And I think they did a good job, because when you think of big palettes, like for example, take a Morphe palette, any random Morphe palette, there are lots of repetitive shades. Like there'll be lots of the similar brown tones, lots of similar like neutral shimmer type situations. But I feel like this one has a lot of interesting colors. None of them are really the same. Like I think you could maybe compare these two, but swatched out, this one's definitely more green tone. So I think all of them are really, really good on their own as far as like they're all individual. There aren't any repeats in this palette. I love the theme of this palette, the gemstones. I think that's really creative. I think that's really fun. Each shade in here is a really good representative of the stone that they are representing. For today's look, let me turn here. I took my Precious all over the lid just to kind of set down concealer. I then took Yora Gem in the crease and like up toward the brow bone. I took Carnelian in the crease all the way to the center of the lid. I then took Alexandrite on the outer corner here. And then I have Smoky Quartz on the inner half, and then Pearl on the inner corner. And then I took a mixture of these two on the lower lash line. And then just for fun, I took a blue liner on the waterline, and this is also by ColourPop, and it's in the shade Prance. I was actually going to do a 3 looks 1 palette using this. I'll throw a poll up here in the eye for you. Let me know if that's something you would like to see. I think that would be really fun. And I do have a review, demo, and swatches of most of these palettes, and if I do, I will link it down in the description box for you to check out if you're interested. So that was how I ranked all of my ColourPop eyeshadow palettes. I thought that was really fun since I had a bunch of them. I thought it would be fun to kind of see where they landed. I just sat down and looked at them, and it honestly wasn't that hard. I do have lots of favorites that I gravitate to more than others, but thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you would like to subscribe, please feel free. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.